He's the greatest catcher of all time. He's Johnny Bench, the Hall of Famer and a two-time World Series champ with the Reds, and of course was a teammate of Pete Rose's. He's got his Pete and Johnny T-shirt on, and last time you saw Pete was when, Johnny?
Actually, I missed him in Nashville. He was there this past weekend. They had a memorabilia show, and I did it on Saturday, and then he was in with Tony and Davey and George and Kenny. And they had one last picture, I guess, at the end of the show. And I did not get to see him because they put us on different days just for draws and stuff. But yeah, I would have. And my plan was, because everybody was saying that he wasn't looking great, he was in a wheelchair. And my plan was to text and wish him, better health. I think it's a sad day for all of us, and what he meant to me, what he meant to the Big Red Machine. But the guys were very concerned about him yesterday on Sunday, because they said he just wasn't the same old Pete. And it's sad. I mean, it really is. I think back to the 1967, even 66, when I went to spring training, but being a part of what Pete's life was and growing with him for all of those years. We were in business. We played together. His goal in life was to get 200 hits. He wanted me to hit 300. I said, you hit 300, I'll drive you on 100 times. But nobody was more driven. He was the epitome of hustle, of energy and desire. If he had 3 hits, he wanted to get 4. If he had 4, he wanted to get 5. I've never seen anybody ever like that. And the day he got 5 hits off of Gaylord Perry is probably one of the greatest hitting days that I can ever remember. He was in the batting title. And I think it was Matty Alou. And it might have been Matlock, but it was like that. And he was actually asking somebody in the stands how Alou was doing, how many hits he had, as he was going, and he needed one more, so he went out and got one more. And he told me stories, but we were in business together, like I said, but his desire and his need to win, his need to succeed, I think it all became part of his life, because he grew up in Western Hills in Cincinnati. He was a river rat, they called him, and barely got a chance to even play the game of baseball. It was a uncle of his that knew a scout that got him a tryout, 145 pounds, and he was never going to make it. And he wanted to prove to everybody. He wanted to be the first $100,000 singles hitter. He wanted to drive a Cadillac, and every day it was like he wanted more. And it was just, it's heartbreaking, because Pete's health was a part of his life. His father died of a heart attack in his early 60s, and Pete's had several procedures. But to think he reached space almost 6,000 times, 6,000 times. I mean, there's nobody like it. There's nobody but it. And damn it, why? Why? You get up and you wonder why all of this happened, and why a desire and a dream and the greatest hitter in the game of baseball, how he could have possibly, get into a situation. And yeah, it bothered all of us, but it was our desire to try to help him. We did everything we could. There was more than people will ever know.
Well, I know you're a big proponent and backer of Pete, after your playing careers. Did you know if Pete bet when he was playing?
There were words, there were talk, there was friends of mine who knew FBI agents, and they actually passed along a word that just, hey, tell your friend to stay as far away from him as you can. And I thought that was kind of as it turned out, I wasn't sure why at the time. Did I know it? No. Did I see him ever call in a bet? No. I mean, the only betting I ever saw him do was at the dog track in spring training.
But you think, you talk about this competitiveness, you can't turn that off. We see athletes, when they're done, they need something else. Pete needed something. When he played, he could, as a manager, but he needed that juice of gambling. And then when you get busted by Major League Baseball, his competitiveness, like Lance Armstrong, it doesn't allow you to apologize.
That's true.
And that he was his own worst enemy. Yes.
It's the adrenaline. And let's face it. We talk about alcoholism. I've had friends of an alcohol. I see kids on drugs all the time. They have a hard time getting off. Gambling is an addiction. Let's just face it. We know it is, and it was for him. But he needed it. He wanted it. He wanted to compete. And when he didn't win, he had to double up, and it's like he had to go after something else. And then when he loved the horses, then maybe it was basketball, then it was football. Everybody bets football. And then what do you know best? Well, let's just assume it was baseball. People say, well, he only bet on the Reds to win, he said. Well, if you don't bet on them every night, you're betting against them. I mean, I got buried in Cincinnati because I didn't support Pete. I didn't support all the things that, it's okay. And it's still Rule 21, no matter what you do. I don't care what you do. And people, whenever you go to speak, first question is, and I look at them and I say, what do you think? And they said, yes. And I said, well, do you have kids? Yes. And I said, well, go home and tell them there's no more rules. And it's like, whoa, well, I said, well, I didn't make the rule. I didn't make the rule. I didn't keep Pete out of. In fact, I went to Commissioner Seelig twice, went to him a third time. He says, no, don't bring it up again. Twice. Mike Schmidt, Joe Morgan, myself. But those are the bad things.
But what if the Hall of Fame just says, we want him on the ballot? Since, they're independent of Major League Baseball. Would you have a problem if Cooperstown says, we're going to have him on the ballot?
It's been their choice since '89.
Yeah.
They've had that option. It wasn't Major League Baseball. It was the Hall of Fame that says, here's who's on the ballot. These are the guys that have played that for 10 years or the certain amount of time that makes you eligible to be voted on. And they chose not to put him on the ballot. I don't have a vote. I'm not a member. I'm a member of the Hall of Fame, but I don't have a vote. And it's interesting to hear so many people saying they would vote for him. So many people say they not vote for him. And there were always lines drawn. And we are a forgiving society. There's people that right now have gone out and killed people. There's people caught in drug sting. There's dealing fraud. They do everything. And yet they're now the face of sports in a lot of ways. And for Pete, I think he had a chance. I think when Uberoff was the commissioner, he tried to get Pete to sign off on a thing. And when Pete said, no, I'll beat it, then it became, I will challenge it. And it's been a losing proposition for him. In the times that Bud, come on, let's try to get him on. Okay, let's get him on. Let's see if he'll do these things. It didn't work. It didn't take. He didn't follow the rules that they had laid down. And man, for all of us, there wasn't a one. Tony Perez, Pete, Joe Morgan, there wasn't one of us that didn't say to Pete, come on, let's do this. And it's sad. It's sad he has to leave his legacy with the gambling part of it rather than a legacy with 4,200 and a jillion hits, 4,256, whatever it is, 5,000 at bats, 5 all-star games in different positions, and the desire and to make everybody better. Everywhere he went, he made everybody better. Hey, look what happened in Philadelphia when we went over there. And Mike Schmidt and all of those guys just stepped it up a notch because their intensity level, because that's what Pete had more than anybody.
I can't tell if you're more mad or sad.
Sad.
Yeah.
I am absolutely devastated. I have cried. I've actually cried because I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want this to happen to Pete. I wanted to save Pete. Yeah, we had our difference. We knocked heads on some certain things and everything else. There wasn't one time that we didn't shake hands or hug whenever we saw each other. I just didn't want it hanging over him. I didn't want this to be part of baseball. I didn't want it to be a black eye on baseball to begin with, but more importantly, Pete gave everything to all of us. All of us. And yet this sickness, this addiction was too much for him to overcome.
He gave you, but he didn't give you what you ultimately wanted, and that is to help Pete help himself.
Yeah, we had quite a talk out in California when we were at an event together, and he said, "Can I see you for a minute?" He came and we went into a different room, and he said, "I apologize. I apologize for everything that I did to you during your Hall of Fame year, how it affected that, how I've affected you after your career, because I know all the questions are coming about me, and it takes away from what you achieved, and it probably takes away from what I achieved. But I'm sorry. I apologize." And I thought, now is the opportunity, Pete. Now is the opportunity to really step forward and say, I'm sorry. Fall at your feet of everyone and say, I'm sorry. And America would forgive him. I mean, somebody said, he'd been worse off shooting, better off shooting somebody. I think than what this has caused. And we seem to make, certain things out of, who took drugs. All right, let's go with Barry Bonds. Let's go with Roger Clemens. Let's go with Sammy Sosa. And then we take Corey Canseco and McGuire. And yet there's guys that probably have taken it or accused of taking it, that's playing now and played forever and played in the Hall of Fame and are in the Hall of Fame probably.
But I wonder about this. Let's say Pete didn't manage. Let's say he was 7 years after his career was over. So he goes in first ballot. He's in the Hall of Fame. He decides to manage. And then they realize that he's gambling on baseball. Would the Baseball Hall of Fame take Pete out, do you think, if he was already in for what he did as a player, but he's accused of gambling as a manager?
I would hope that the club would interject. I would hope that the club would step in and say, Pete, this is a warning. Everybody knows it. I mean, we have all the detectives in the world in Major League Baseball. They're checking everything that you do. And if they found out or something that this was a situation, these are what ifs. What if he never made that first bet? What if he had won his first bet? What if he had not lost and doubled down? What if all of these things would have happened? If you don't bet on your team every night, okay, that's betting against them. That we know. But if he'd have, these are all scenarios that had he done it, I'm sure that I found out about it. I was the owner. I would have come down and said, Pete, no, knock this off. Or they would have fired him on the spot because the integrity of baseball is still the most important thing we have.
What would you say to Commissioner Manfred today? Let's say he's listening to this interview.
He's made that decision. He's had a one-on-one with Pete. He's had a one-on-one, hour and a half.
So no budging that he. What did you hear from that conversation he had with Pete?
Well, we know what his decision was. Nothing. No, you're not going to be on the ballot.
But he can't, and you know this better than anybody, Johnny, is this commissioner can't make that decision because you're going against Bud Selig and you're going against Bart Giamatti. And I don't think he wants, this isn't a legacy that you want. I mean, this commissioner's done some good things for baseball. I just don't know. It seems hypocritical if you put him in posthumously.
Well, the thing that bothers me today is everything is gambling. You're probably being sponsored by something.
Yes.
I mean, we're now condoning it, and we're now seeing it. I'm watching the game yesterday, and I see 90% probability the Braves will win, 10% on the Met. Now they scored 3 runs. Now it's 60-40. I mean, now you got it on your phone where you can bet on swings. They say you can bet on foul balls. You can bet on pitchers, strikeouts. I mean, it's become part of it. And now we see a couple of young players who now have been banned from baseball or at least suspended. I think that's the thing we have to figure out.
But I can't. No, but you could alter
baseball's
the game.
looking at it differently. Baseball is actually looking at this differently now.
Well, they're doing this to make money off fans. You can't have the people involved in these games with the potential to alter the outcome. That's why I know they're in bed with gambling, but players can't be involved in this because they can manipulate the outcome, fix a game.
Well, so can the fans. Strangely enough, I mean, if you ever been to a golf tournament when a guy's in his backswing and somebody coughs or sneezes or his phone happens to chirp or anything else because he doesn't want him to hit the ball in the fairway or he doesn't want all of these, there's scenarios. These are possibilities. Yes, I understand the money's out there, and that's what it's all about, is having the owners and paying for the salaries that they've got out there. That's understandable. That's what we do. We're all in it for the dollar at this point, as they say, the owners would say. And that's what we're going to have to do. If we're going to give a $700 million contract, somehow we've got to pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that, even in the, 700 million, 2 million, 50 million, that's a lot, but I think baseball is starting to take a different look at it now. Okay, we're condoning betting. And should we take another look at Pete? I've heard that.
Okay. Your first reaction to when Pete slid head first, when you first saw it?
I was doing it in Binger, Oklahoma.
Because Pete was doing it?
No. I hadn't seen Pete. This is back in the early 60s. So I had never TV. I wouldn't know who Pete was in 63. He came up as a rookie. So I never saw Pete Rose head first slide. I was head first sliding with Enos Slaughter.
Is he the first one to do a head first slide?
Enos Slaughter, yeah. He was known for that. And I did the head first slide. And then when I got up to Cincinnati, Pete was doing the head first slide. So I didn't do the head first slide anymore. It's his deal. I mean, I've never seen anybody. I don't know if you can call it a slide. I mean, the statue he has in front of his stadium is perfect.
Yeah.
That is absolutely Pete Rose. That's the way he dove into everything with aggressiveness. I mean, you can still look back at the 1975 World Series when he went into third. If you can remember that base hit in there and he dove in there like that. I mean, he's 2 feet off the ground, flying through the air, and that's the way the statue, and that's the way epitomized what Pete was. It's just, damn it, Pete, you did it to us, you did it to yourself, and we have to talk about this. We have to talk about what was your life, and your life, no matter how you want to do it. 4,200 hits now goes no, he gambled. Rule 21 beats 4. Rule 21 beats 4256, and that's the sad thing about it, because God, could he play 200? I mean, every year hits, get in, score, run the bases as good as anybody. And for a guy to give up a position as an all-star and when George Foster was traded over, Sparky goes out to Pete and said, I need you to play third. Okay. He was second base. Then he goes to first base. I mean, he created everything that he did. With the determination and love for the game. I don't think anybody loved the game more than Pete.
And I hear what you're saying. We should be talking about Pete, the ball player, but what he did overshadowed that, and it's just hard to get through the trees with.
I know. It's the greatest story ever. 4256. When he beat Cobb, it was the greatest story. Nobody can beat Cobb. Nobody. There was impossible to beat Cobb. And then he goes past it. And then he goes past it. I mean, we can talk about Ripken and his longevity and everything else. But Pete was out there for 190 hits for 13 years. And we brag about a guy who got 170 now. We look at the top hitters in the game of baseball and his batting titles and all the stuff and all the runs that he scored and all the things. And no, we got to talk about this. And damn it, Pete, that's just not the way I wanted to end this. That's not the way I wanted to see you go out.
Stay healthy, okay?
Working my ass off.
Stay healthy.
Thank you, Dan. You too.
All right. Love you. Johnny Bench.